All right. Good morning. Good morning, Russ. Thank you for that. That was a great piece of music there, that last one. Put you in the right meditative mood there. At least it did for me. So thank you very much. Great job on joining me here this morning. You certainly are ahead of your competition because they are still in bed, let alone up and at 'em and focused on their personal development. So great job with that. So I want you to write this down. Excuse me. I got a frog in my throat. I want you to write down this statement. Sometimes things don't work out as planned. Write that down if you're taking notes. Sometimes things don't work out as planned. I want to share with you just a fun story. This was, oh my heavens, it's been probably 10, 12, oh, maybe 13 years ago. Bought a new camera, and back in the day, an expensive camera could cost, around $3,000. And I spent about that on this camera. I want to say it was it was either a Canon or a Nikon. I don't remember which, but it was a great camera. I went to a camera store and told them I wanted a great camera because I wanted to take some great pictures. And so I remember having this new camera, and I was on my way to work in development. I was selling a community up in Midway, Utah. For those of you in Salt Lake, and those of you who are from California don't know where Midway is. It's near Park City. It's a great little sleepy town, kind of a resort town. Beautiful, looks like the Swiss Alps. Well, I was representing a builder who had a development in a resort community right on the golf course. Beautiful product. And I was on my way up there making this beautiful drive, and I had the new camera because I thought, you know what, I'm going to bring it with me today because I'm going to look for an opportunity to take some great photos up in the mountains. Just gorgeous up there. Well, I'm about 2/3 of the way to the site, to the community, and I look to my right down in the river bottom at the Jordan, excuse me, the Provo River. It's a great area where there's a lot of fly fishing that occurs and a lot of wildlife. Well, as luck would have it, I looked down there to my right, and right next to the river in the willows, a tall stand of willows, is this huge, and I mean huge, bull moose. Rocky and Bullwinkle, right? Well, this thing was like Bullwinkle with this huge rack. And it was down there minding its own business next to the river in the stand of willows, just eating the leaves off the willows. And I got this brilliant idea. I said, aha, I got this new camera and I'm looking for great photos to take. So I pull over, park the Jeep, get the camera all ready, put it around my neck, on the strap. Now, keep in mind, I am dressed in a suit, okay? So I've got my dress shoes on, I've got my dress pants, I got my dress shirt, I got my tie on, I've got my jacket, right? I am ready to go. I'm ready to go to work. That's where I'm headed. But I've got this camera and I'm going to go down to the river next to this stand of willows and watch the moose and get some pictures. So and this is probably about a 100, maybe 150 yard little trek to get down there. And I've got to walk down the hill, because the road is elevated, and then I get into the fields and then, go around this wetland area, this marsh area. It's really like a pond, it's got all the reeds coming out, and, it smells kind of swampy, because the water's still. And I get over to the stand of willows where the moose can't see me. I'm a good standing at this point, because you have to be careful. A bull moose can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. And I have to tell you, this particular bull moose was every bit of 2,000 pounds. This thing was a small car that had the ability to look around, to seek out danger, and to attack if it needed to, because they will. They are very, very aggressive. So that didn't deter me, apparently. So I get to where I'm positioned, and I realize that there's no way for me to get a good perspective and get some great shots of this bull moose as it's enjoying its breakfast. So I look ahead of me, probably about 15, 20 feet, and I see this big stand of logs and branches and twigs and everything, stuff that had been accumulated during the floods, during the high waters down in the river. When the river overflows its banks and all the debris that's in it over the spring runoff, that stuff will collect. And there was this big stand of logs and branches and twigs. And it was probably about the size of a car. It was that big. Well, I needed to get on top of that because it was high enough that if I got on top of that, I could oversee the entire area where the moose is, and I actually kind of look not so much down on it, but maybe eye to eye, as opposed to below it, at the base of these willows that it was standing in. Because as the moose is standing there, as it's eating, the only thing that I could see from the lower perspective was this big rack that would just, let me put my hands together like this. It would just wave back and forth, and it would kind of dip down, and it would come back up. And what it was doing is it would go down at the base of the willows and kind of just strip off the leaves from the willow itself. Well, that wouldn't do. I couldn't see, and I couldn't take my pictures doing that. So I looked at the stand, and I saw that there was this branch that was sticking out that kind of offered itself as a handle to me, kind of to get some leverage to get up on top, and so I could get a better perspective and take my photos. Now, keep in mind, at this point, I had moved, much closer to the moose, and it was getting a little dicey because as I grabbed a hold of that stick and then positioned my foot on the stand of logs and branches to kind of hoist myself up, I realized that at that point I was probably about 40, maybe 45 feet at most away from this moose. Now, the good news is that there were all the willows that he was standing in that separated us, plus this stand that I was on, but it was still only about 40, 45 feet. Well, as I grabbed that branch and just really gave a good tug to it and put everything I had to get it on top of this thing, I was about halfway up, momentum moving forward, and then all of a sudden that branch broke. It just snapped, and it made, I will just tell you, it sounded like a bomb had gone off. Now, the reason I say that is that is an exaggeration, no doubt. But I was trying to be quiet because there's a 2,000-pound killer in front of me that doesn't want to be bothered while it's eating its breakfast. Well, I had disturbed it. Make no mistake about it. Immediately, that rack, which was down in the willows, came up, and then I saw his head. At this point, he wanted to make certain that not only was he noticed, but he wanted to see what made that noise. And immediately, there I am. I had caught myself, fortunately, and I'm kind of in limbo, holding on to other parts of this stand so I don't fall all the way back, but certainly can't get all the way up. And I don't want to move, guys and gals, at this point, because in an instant that thing could attack me. So we were in this competition to see who was going to move first. Now, he was looking right at me, and I wasn't certain if he saw me or if he was just looking in my general direction, but he was looking what I felt like was right at me. And I was frozen, like a snowman in winter, not moving. And it seemed like it was forever. And I don't know how long it was. It could have been 10 seconds, could have been 30 seconds, could have been 2 minutes. I don't know. But at some point, I won the stirring contest. And that bull moose went back to his business and went swooping down to get some more leaves off of the willows. And I gave him a chance to do that a couple of times to get into a rhythm and feel comfortable. And again, I started to move forward to get on top of the stand. This time I didn't grab anything. I just was going to use my strength to do it because I had already gotten part of the way up. Well, again, as I moved forward, he looked up and the same thing happened. And I thought, there is no way I'm going to be able to get to the top of the stand. And so again, we had our stirring contest and I won again, and he went back to doing his thing. So I thought, you know what, there's nothing I can do. I'm just gonna have to start taking my pictures. This will be the best that I can do. So I'm snapping my photos and looking at them thinking, this just isn't going to do. So I tried to get back up onto the top of the stand. And again, he looked at me, but this time, guys and gals, I have to tell you, it was a much more urgent and dire situation. Instead of this thing pausing to look to see what was there and making the noise, he charged after me. And I swear to you, he charged after me. And you have never seen a human being run as quickly as I ran at that moment to go those 150 yards at that point to get to my Jeep, to get to safety. In fact, I ran so quickly and without regard to what was going on. Remember that pond or that wetland that I went around to get to the stand? I went literally right through that. And I did not look back. You know, there's people in the like the horror films where they're running from the killer, the monster, whatever it is, and they've got to turn around to look to see how close the monster is. I have to tell you, I did not do that. I kept thinking to myself, do not look back, just run, run, run. And I am running like a madman as best I can with my suit on, my dress shoes, going through the pond. Well, fortunately, I made it to the hill, ran up the hill, and I did not look around until I got to the top of the hill. And the crazy thing is, I have to tell you, that moose had gone about probably 2/3 of the way from where he was to where my car was. This thing was chasing me. Now, I don't know what happened. I can't tell you. My suspicion is that the thing did not go through the pond like I did, and it went around, but it pursued me. Crazy. I got into the Jeep and I sat there, and I have to tell you, I just collected myself. I don't know how long it took, but I was in there for minutes just simply collecting myself because I was freaked out of my mind. Crazy. Now, you wrote down when we started, I asked you to write down the phrase that sometimes things don't work out as planned. And that was a situation where things didn't work out as planned for me. I went back and I looked later in the day when I collected myself and felt like I could do it without suffering trauma, looked at the pictures that I had taken, and none of them are really worthwhile. They certainly weren't the risk that I had taken. But here's what I want you to do. I share that story with you because it's fun, but it really exemplifies this concept or this idea that sometimes things don't work out as planned. So I want you to think about a time in your life where things did not work out as planned. I want you to think about it. I don't care how far back you have to go, but I just want you to think about some time in your life where things didn't work out as planned. Just take a second to think about that as I take a drink of my water. Now, as you start to recollect that situation or those situations, let me ask you a question. Did you survive? And of course, the answer is yes, you survived because you're here this morning on this Zoomcast participating. Let me ask you this question. Did you learn something from that situation, from that experience that didn't turn out as you expected? Did you learn something from it? And I think more importantly, did you grow? Did you grow from that circumstance, from that scenario, from that experience? And let me ask you this, did something good come from it? See, we all have situations in our lives where we plan a certain thing, we have this idea of what's going to happen, and then the wheels fall off of it, like my endeavor into becoming Ansel Adams and getting a great photo of some moose in its natural habitat, right? But we're going to commit to doing certain things, and the world will throw obstacles at us, and it will smack us in the face, it will knock us down. And it's not, of course, the outcome that we had expected. But look, sometimes things will happen and our plans don't work out as we expected. Sometimes things don't work out as planned. But sometimes, guys and gals, they work out even better. Let me share this story with you. You know, I think it was 2007, I believe it was. Yeah, it was 2007. I'm sitting in my house in Draper, Utah. Big, beautiful house, about 7,500 square feet. Gorgeous home. Beautiful city and mountain views. It was my dream home up to that point. 4-car garage, theater, all these amazing amenities and features in this home. I was living a good life. And I'd had a couple of friends over. We were playing board games. We played board games, Risk, Monopoly, and other things. Well, one of my friends who was there that evening, a very successful man by the name of Dennis Peters, a builder, developer, had done very well, made himself a multimillionaire. And sitting there at my kitchen table playing these board games, and we were talking about my plans, what I was doing. I was going to sell this home that I had built about 18 months before. Had only spent about $750,000 on the home in its entirety, and it was worth at that point, remember this was years ago, was worth about $1.5 million. Well, my plan was to sell it, to buy a lot up in Park City, and then build an even bigger home, an even better home, an even more luxurious home in a better community. And so I had done that. I had worked to buy a lot. I bought a lot up in Park City, and I was in the process of putting together the plans and then submitting those to get the permit for construction. And Dennis said to me, he said, John, with everything that's going on in the market, because at that point, if you were in the market, you're old enough to remember, the market was very frothy. Homes were definitely, prices were inflated. And I knew that. That was one of the reasons that I wanted to sell my home, maybe even get it sold before the 2-year requirement to avoid capital gains. And he said to me, he said, aren't you nervous about what's going on? I said, no, Dennis, I'm not. I'm not nervous because, man, I've got a plan. I've done this before. I've built multiple homes before, and I've never been in a better situation. I said, I've got a lot of money in the bank. I've got this home that we're selling that I know that when I get it sold, I'm going to end up with a huge amount of surplus cash. I'm going to be able to pay cash for the lot in Park City. I'm going to be able to pay it off, even before we close on the construction loan. And I said, I've also had the new home plans appraised with the list of materials and everything. And the appraiser says that the home should appraise for about $4 million. And I'm putting about $2.1 million into the home. So with my down payment plus the equity that I'll have in the home, because I'm going to be building the home, I'm basically the general contractor. I said, I'm going to have over 50% equity in this home, plus all the cash I got in the bank. I said, I'm just not worried. He said, you're sure? And I said, yeah. I said, look, I've done this before, and I've been here, done this. I said, but the only thing, Dennis, I remember these words. It was almost like I was prophetic. I wished I had paid attention. I said, the only thing that would prevent this thing from coming off as I am planning, that would make the wheels fall off. I remember that was the phrase that I used. I said, the only thing that would make the wheels fall off of this whole plan would be another Great Depression. Those were my words. Now, any of us who know about what happened in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, it wasn't known as a depression, but it became known as the Great Recession. It was just about as bad as a depression. In fact, it was the worst economy since the Great Depression. Well, within the course of about 2 years from that conversation that I had with Dennis, I had already committed, things were already in motion. And I went from being on top of the world to losing everything that I had financially. In other words, my plan did not work out. But I have to tell you this, going back to what I said, that sometimes things don't work out as planned, they work out even better. You might say, well, wait a minute, John, you had this plan of building this big, beautiful, gorgeous home, and you were going to have all of that equity. How could you say that worked out even better? Well, here's the thing. See, we have this idea of the way things should work out. And then, of course, the world says, our creator says, or the higher power, just, fate, destiny, whatever it says, no, this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to actually work out. Had I not lost everything and been put into a situation like I was in, I wouldn't be here today sharing this message with you. I know I wouldn't. Because it was losing everything that really created the opportunity for George and I to have the conversation where he asked me, what do you think about starting our own real estate brokerage? Because see, if he had come to me and I had all of that money, all of that equity, and I was riding high and things were good, I would have said, no, I'm not interested. But in that moment, almost in a moment of desperation, of grasping for what am I going to do, right? 50% of the agents in the marketplace, by the time it was all said and done, got out of the market. 50% of the brokerages who were in business had gotten out of the market. And here we are having this conversation. And I look at it 11 years later, and I say to myself, and I do, honestly, guys and gals, I say to myself, I am so grateful that things happened the way that they did. Now, that doesn't mean that it wasn't easy. It's one of the most difficult things I ever experienced. In fact, it caused so much stress that literally there were times there for about 6 months, and I'm not exaggerating. I literally thought that I was dying. I thought that I was dying of a brain tumor. I thought that I had throat cancer. I thought that I had MS. I swear to you. And I had gone to various doctors. I had 5 MRIs done over the course of 6 months to try to find out what the problem was, because I knew that I was dying. And yet what it was stress. So look, guys and gals, sometimes things don't work out as planned, but I believe they work out even better. The second thing that I want you to write down, if you're taking notes, is this: see things as they are and not worse than they are. You know, I could have looked at that situation where I lost everything and just simply, you know, given up hope and become a victim and commiserated with those who were victims as well, and taken years, if ever, to recover. I didn't, fortunately. One of the reasons is this, and it's the reason that you know, I wrote this down as I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you this morning, is what got me through that. It was seeing things as they were, not worse than they were at that time. I want you to think about this. This is an important statement. No one knows enough to be a pessimist. I want you to think about that. You don't know enough to wake up today and be a pessimist. Negative about any scenario. I don't care about what the scenario is in your personal life or in your business. You don't know enough to be a pessimist about any particular outcome that might be an eventuality, a possibility. You might say, well, wait a minute, John, you know, you say that no one knows enough to be a pessimist, but no one knows enough to be an optimist either. Well, that's true. But my question for you is, which standard are you going to live by? Because they're both a choice. I mean, either both statements are absolutely incorrect or both statements are correct. I happen to believe that both statements are correct. No one knows enough to be an optimist and no one knows enough to be a pessimist. I think they're both correct, but which one are you going to choose to live by? Because it is a choice and you're going to live by one of them. We all are. We're going to choose to either believe, right, that things are going to work out or that things aren't. And here's why it's important. Because if we say, well, we don't know enough either way, but so then why would it matter? Well, here's why it matters. It comes down to your attitude. See, it's not so much whether things are going to work out or not going to work out, because there's so many things that are out of our control, right? I did my best to make certain that that plan succeeded, and yet it didn't. But the important thing is this, that I maintained an attitude that allowed me to then begin to pick up the pieces, pick up myself, and move forward. Because I had the attitude as an optimist that things were going to work out eventually. Didn't mean that every time I tried something it was going to work out, but I just knew that no matter what, that as long as I didn't give up, things were going to work out. So which standard are you going to live by? Are you going to live by the standard that no one knows enough to be an optimist, or are you going to live by the standard that no one knows enough to be a pessimist? See, I choose the one that no one knows enough to be a pessimist. That is my standard. Look, I'll give you an example, prospecting. When you think about prospecting, what comes to mind? Do you think, well, they're just going to say no, right? The mind of a pessimist, they're just going to say no. Why would I call if they're going to say no? I'm not going to call. It's a very scary thing for me. I'm not going to call. Versus the thought process of an optimist, which is, of course I'm going to call because they're going to say yes. See, and again, some of you are saying, well, wait a minute, you don't know that they're going to say yes. Well, you don't know that they're going to say no. Well, yes, I do, John, because I call and a lot of people say no. Well, but don't they say yes sometimes? See, again, it's just simply, which rule are you going to live by? I think that they're both rules, but I just choose to pay attention to the one that's going to give me the best outcomes, permit me to have the right attitude to go out, and when things don't work out, to persist, and when they do work out, they work out because I didn't stop. See, when you're prospecting, do you say, well, they're going to be mean? I mean, I don't want to prospect because they're going to be mean. I just know people are mean. Versus they're going to be nice. Or how about, I don't want to prospect because they're going to hang up on me. People have hung up on me before. Versus they're going to want to stay on the phone and talk my ear off. Because have you not had people talk your ear off as you prospected? Of course, the answer is yes. Well, you know what? They're going to ask me questions that I can't answer. Versus, you know what? There isn't any question that they can answer me that I don't have the answer for or couldn't get the answer for. Or how about this? You know what? They're not going to want to meet with me. Versus, you know what? I'll set an appointment. I can find somebody who's going to be willing, who needs my help, that I don't have to convince, that they're just simply, it's going to be the right person, the right time, the right place. And they're going to say, yes, how did you know that we were thinking about selling our home? This is like divine intervention. I mean, how many times has that happened? I can't, the number of times in my career where that's happened, because I just simply didn't give up and I continued to make the calls. And somebody said, how did you know? Well, I didn't, but because I was doing my job, it created an opportunity where it just seemed like the stars aligned and it was divine intervention. And I was placed in front of them because that's what was meant to be. And maybe that's the case. All I know is I live by the standard that things were going to work out. So look, guys and gals, our attitudes make all the difference in how we see the world and the experiences that we have. Let me say that again. Our attitudes make all the difference in how we see the world and the experiences that we have. I remember this was probably about a year and a half ago. I'm in Simi Valley and I'm at an intersection, a large intersection, and I'm sitting there. I'm the first car in my lane. There's another car, obviously, in the lane to my right, one to my left. The one to my left is a turning lane. The one to my right is like my lane going straight. And I'm at this intersection and we're at a red light. And I look to my right and I see this mammoth, and I mean mammoth. The thing was probably 45 feet long. A Class A bus conversion motorhome. Now we've all seen these. This is not a Winnebago with vinyl or a fiberglass exterior. This thing is like polished aluminum, stainless steel accents, an amazing paint job where it wasn't this polished metal. Gorgeous. This home thing, this whole thing, this bus is legitimately a home. If you've ever been in one of these things, they have like a fireplace, like an electric fireplace. They've got TVs that come up out of the counter. They've got granite countertops. They have exotic wood cabinets. They've got Wolf range and refrigerator appliances, king size beds. I mean, phenomenal. This thing is a home. And this particular one probably cost $1.5 to $2 million. When you think about the average home in the California markets, around 700,000, in the Utah around 350, 400,000. This thing costs multitudes of that. And I'm watching this guy who's at the intersection. He had a green light, but the light changed to yellow. And he's trying to navigate this huge bus, because that's what it was, this huge bus through the intersection. And he's trying to make a turn. He's trying to make a right turn. And as he's doing that, well, the light changes red. And I'm watching the car to my right and then all the traffic behind us, and how they were responding. I'm watching with fascination as this guy's trying to navigate this intersection with this beast that he's driving. And I'm looking at it and thinking, I wonder how long he's had this thing. It's not that he didn't know what he was doing. It's just like, this thing's pretty big. And I'm thinking, I wonder how long he's had this thing. And if he's a nervous wreck right now, or if he's got this thing. Because what started to happen is the car next to me and then all the cars behind me, and I say all of them, but we're probably 2 or 3 of them, start laying on their horns, and especially like honking on their horns. And the car next to me, he's like freaking his mind because this Class A motorhome bus house is trying to finish their trek through this intersection, and he's freaking his mind. Now, I don't know what was going through his mind, but I just know that as I'm watching this guy try to navigate this, I'm asking myself questions like, I wonder how long he's had it. I wonder how much it costs. I wonder what this guy does for a living to be able to afford a toy like this, because he has a toy that's 2-3 times as much as the average person's home in this market. I'm asking myself those questions, just fascinated by it and thinking, well, he'll get through it. I wasn't thinking about the delay that he was causing, but this person next to me is freaking his mind and on his horn, and I mean, will not let up on it. And I could only imagine what was going through that person's mind. And the person behind them, that, who do you think you are? That light was yellow. You shouldn't have gone through it. Just this, and I don't know that this is the case, guys and gals. I don't. It could have been, quite frankly, that the guy next to me was late for the most important appointment in his life. Maybe his wife was at the hospital and she was giving birth to their first child. I don't know. All I know is that my experience was a lot different than his and the people behind, because ultimately of our attitudes. See, I believe that our attitudes make all the difference in how we see the world and the experiences that we have. So just look, in summary, I want you to think about today and the experiences that you're going to have. And recognize that sometimes things don't work out as planned. And I have to say, thank heavens for that. So when you have a plan for today and things don't work out exactly the way you expected, be okay with that. Because you could have an attitude of that, you know what, it was a horrible day. I expected that this was going to happen and it didn't. Or you can simply say, you know what, it didn't work out as planned, but thank heavens. And then look for reasons as to why that's okay. Reasons as to why that in your mind that it was actually a good outcome. It was a good scenario. Even if it was a difficult day, what did you learn from it? How did you grow from that set of circumstances? The second thing I would ask you to do is to see things as they are and not any worse than they are. Remember what we talked about. We can either choose to be a pessimist or an optimist. And I suppose that we couldn't fault you for being either one, because no one knows enough to be either one. All I know is that the standard by which we live, whether we're going to be a pessimist or an optimist, has a very direct impact on how we respond to circumstances and whether we're going to persist and give us an opportunity to actually succeed. And finally, our attitude is the single most important determinant to our experience and our success. And here's the thing, all three of those things, guys and gals, all three of those things are simply a choice. See, we may not be able to choose ultimately what happens to us, but we do have an opportunity to choose what happens for us. And every situation, regardless of its outcome, can be something we look at and say, you know what, that happened for me. And therein lies the difference between being an average person who will complain about all the negative things that have happened to them and how they're a victim, versus the extraordinary person who simply says, you know what, like the duck that lets water run off of its back, it was an opportunity to grow, and it was an opportunity to pick myself up and to persist to live a life that the average person won't, because I just simply kept moving forward with an attitude that it was going to work out. Here's what I know, that today will work out for you. You're going to survive today. You're going to get through it. My question is, what will your experience be? Regardless of what happens, will it be a good experience or a bad experience? I believe today, regardless of what happens, whether I achieve exactly what I want or the wheels fall off, as long as I persist and move forward, that it will be a great day. And that if I string together an attitude and days like that, that it will eventually all work out and that I'll achieve what it is that I want. See, I believe that. We have an opportunity to choose, and as a result, to really dictate what sort of life that we'll live. So I just want to encourage you to recognize that today and moving forward, that this is all within your control, not exactly what happens, but your attitude relative to what happens and your persistence to eventually get what it is that you want. It may not look exactly the way you envisioned it, but I have to tell you, my life today doesn't look as I envisioned it 15 years ago, and I'm glad that it isn't. I am fortunate, I am grateful that it is what it is today. And I'm hoping that, and I believe that that attitude, based upon what I want moving forward in the next 5 to 10, 15 years, that it may not work out as I expect. And you know what? That will be okay too, because oftentimes things will work out for the better. All right, guys and gals, let's finish it up with some closing affirmations. Great job on being here. And let's go out there today and let's do our jobs and do it with a great attitude and go out there and make a difference in the lives of other people, because that is why we are here. All right, here we go. Closing affirmations.